Hi, I am Dory Chattel. I'm the Executive Director of the Medical Education Institute, a nonprofit organization that empowers people with kidney disease to manage and improve their health. We are so passionate about the ability of home dialysis to make people's lives better that we launched the Home Dialysis Central website 21 years ago in 2004. Our sponsor for this webinar is Fresenius Medical Care, and our advocate guests are from Fresenius. So we are so glad to be here to talk about what we call the flip, which is switching from PD that isn't working anymore to home hemo. PD in general does not tend to be a lifelong therapy for most people. It tends to be a shorter term therapy, and there are reasons for that, and we are happy to talk about them if you ask us questions. We would like to have lots of questions today from you all. Otherwise, you're only going to get my questions, and those may or may not answer the ones you have. So this topic gives us a chance to talk about what happens when PD stops working and how home hemo is more similar to PD than you might think, but more efficient. And it could take up a lot less space too. Rashonda Turner and Keith Jones, who are with us today, have made this switch, and Jen Ravert has 10 years of nursing experience training people for both PD and home hemo, including helping lots of folks successfully make the flip. So ask her and any of us anything. Often, ask often. We would like to see lots of questions, as I said, and I want to tell you that if you are in our Facebook group, you cannot use the live chat to ask questions, but you can use the Q&A, and we will be checking both, and Christy will help us with that. And so we are going to start, and I'd like to kick us off by having Jen introduce herself right after she takes a swallow of her beverage.
I did.
I know.
So great.
Very impressive.
So I'm Jen Ravert. I'm a registered nurse. I'm also the granddaughter and the daughter of dialysis patients. My stepdad actually did PD to start and then flipped to home hemo. So it's something that we've done in my house as well. My mom is also cross-trained. So I really like the flip conversation in general, from like a nurse perspective and from a family perspective. I like when people stay home when they want to.
And how many people did you have not flip from PD to home hemo when PD stopped working?
I do not recall ever having a patient who did not go to home hemo from PD unless they were, like moving or going off dialysis or getting a transplant. They all kind of went over. It was
So
across the hall. That's why I shifted.
it took a little while for us to help Jen understand that she is in fact a unicorn and that most people never even hear that it's possible to switch from PD to home HD, let alone to never have a failure in trying to do it. So Jen is exactly the nurse that you want to see on this webinar if you have a question about switching from PD to home hemo, because she has done it all. And now I will ask Keith to introduce himself and tell his story, and then I will ask Rashonda.
My name's Keith Jones, and my dialysis journey started, it was about the end of 2020 or the beginning of 21. And I was told about home hemo to begin with, but
Good.
I had the outlook on everything that it was just going to be fine. I was going to do PD. I had already had some possible living donors lined up, and I was just going to breeze right through this. Little did I know, 2 years later, I was still doing PD, and I went from about 6 hours a night at the very beginning, and I ended up doing 14 hours a night
Ooh.
before I was done. And believe it or not, I worked full time through all of that. So it was quite a journey when I
Wow.
when I did make the switch. I had kind of decided on my own. My doctor had told me that, we can continue PD. The only thing you're going to do is you'll eventually at one point be on it 24 hours a day. And I just, didn't want to live that lifestyle. So I directly went to my dialysis nurse and told her, I said, Rita, I should have listened to you. It's time to switch to home hemo. And the process just took off from there. Looking back on everything, I wished I would have listened to her in the beginning. Would have saved a lot of, not really trouble, but just going through the PD process and everything. Uh, I just wished I would have went straight to HHD in the very beginning.
What kind of work did 14 hours at night of PD allow you to do? I'm curious.
I am the manager of a funeral home in our town.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
what one, I suppose, positive with that, with the PD machine, you can pause it. And, if I got called out at night, I could unhook and
Sure.
then come back and, start the treatment at where I had left off. The disadvantage to that is if you're gone 2 hours from that treatment, then it adds 2 hours on to the end time. So I sometimes wouldn't start my day until 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning because I had to, make up that time that I had suspended the machine,
Sure.
the cycler. So yeah,
All right.
uh,
Well, that is, I could see how that job would work for you, and that's terrific that it did.
yeah,
And you're still there?
yep,
Awesome. All
yep.
right. That's
I've
terrific.
been doing this so about 35 years.
Wow.
So
Awesome.
yep.
All right. Roshonda, how about you? How did your story unfold?
So I've been on this journey a little bit longer than Keith, but it's so nice to hear his story because it's very different from mine. Even the encouragement and the information as far as knowing that HHD was an option. So
Mhm.
that's nice to hear. So I started my journey, I guess, 2012 is when I was basically told about my kidney disease during my pregnancy. So I was pregnant,
Mhm.
and was told that my kidneys were not doing well. And I did not reach complete kidney failure until I want to say 2016.
Wow.
Was
Okay.
when I actually started dialysis. And my education was really more focused on PD, is kind of where I was pushed as far as home options.
Mm.
PD was kind of the gold standard in home, and it was like if you were going to start and you could make urine, then you should do PD. And
Mhm.
so that was where I kind of fell, was I wanted to do PD. I planned to do PD, however, I crashed. And what that basically means is I didn't make it to get the catheter. I ended up in the ER and had to have emergency dialysis where you get the catheter put in your neck and all of that fun stuff, before I could get my PD catheter placed. I did PD successfully for about 2.5 years. And like Keith, I worked as well, full time. I started off though with my prescription was already 10 hours to start. When
Wow.
I ended, I was pushing 14. And that was basically not just being hooked to the machine. I was doing manuals in the day. I was
Mhm.
getting off with a fill. I was doing all of the things to the point that it was no longer living and doing dialysis. It was doing dialysis and trying to find life. Like that's really what it started to feel like after a while.
Squeezing your life in around the corners.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I had a baby. I was working full time and I was trying to do all the things, and it was a lot.
I I do not know how you did all those things,
Me
Roshonda.
either. I don't know how I did it either. But it's something that happens where you could just drag yourself around and you don't realize you're doing it until you fall over. And so that's what I did. I ended up crashing again on PD, unfortunately. Again, I was not really educated. I did not know that PD would fail. I thought it was something that I could carry on for the entirety of my dialysis journey until either I got a transplant or what have you. So I was pushing to hold on to it because I did not want to go in center. I just knew that that's not where I wanted to be. I had a very short time in there and I didn't want to go back. And so I held on to PD a lot longer than I should have. And I crashed and ended up back in the ER with another catheter placed because, again, I had no access. I wasn't prepared, right?
Right.
So it wasn't until I went back in center for the second time that I was educated about home hemo. And I knew that I needed to do that. And that's where I switched over to home hemodialysis. And I have been on home hemo now for almost 8 years.
Right.
Yeah.
And what's your most recent option?
Yeah, so most recently
Very,
I
very,
know
very recent.
I am actually experimenting with nocturnal is what I am doing. So I completed my first full nocturnal dialysis last night and it was actually really good. I'm surprised. So, and I
She
was
slept
able
and
to sleep.
everything, y'all.
Yes, I was able to sleep.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Great.
You did amazing, and that's so great. So, I have a question or two before I let Jen at y'all.
Mhm.
So, Keith, you were doing PD and then you switched to not to home hemo. Were the needles an issue for you? Because I think that those are off-putting for a lot of folks on PD, and we may as well talk about them.
They were. In fact, when I first started, that's what I told my dialysis nurse, Rita. I said, there's no way I can stick those needles in my arm. They're the size of a pencil.
Many people have said those very words.
Yep. And that it was overwhelming. I remember when I was in training for HHD, and I think it was about the second or third day, I had to cannulate myself. And I was just, oh, there's no way. But, after they showed me exactly how to do everything, and after about the second or third time, it went really easy and smooth. And I got over that being so overwhelmed and intimidated by it. And, by the end of dialysis for me, I probably could have done it with my eyes closed. And it was just second nature almost. But yes, very intimidating in the beginning.
Yes, I think a lot of people have that reaction, and I
Yeah.
think that the more that people hear up front, you have options. You have
Yep.
lots of options. You have so many
Yep.
options, it's going to be hard to even pick one. We do have a tool that helps people choose an option. I wish I could flash something up on the screen, but I didn't do any slides to share. That tool is called My Kidney Life Plan. So it's My Kidney, is it mykidneylifeplan.org? I think it is. I'm afraid to open a window right now, but that is actually a URL I have memorized. That is a free online tool that the Medical Education Institute developed that will help you see how all 7 of the types of dialysis and transplant and conservative management might fit your life. And you get to decide which ones you look at. You can turn on or off all dialysis, transplant, or comfort care. So anyway, mykidneylifeplan.org. And Rashonda, how about you? How were the needles for you?
So pretty similar. I mean, no one wants to stick themselves, right? Like it's just kind of a thing. I started with a catheter and I was like, why can't I just keep using my catheter? So that was kind of my thought process going into it was I should just be able to use this catheter. You all should leave me alone.
You used a PD catheter. Why is
Right.
this so terrible?
Exactly. And
Uh-huh.
so, yeah, so that was the conversation that I had a lot with my doctors and my nurses.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of back and forth. And my doctor, we like to call them our come to Jesus meetings where we had to sit down and get real. And so we would have to sit down and talk about what it would look like if I got an infection with my catheter and kind of how they would have to
Yeah.
clear it up and what the meds may look like. It was so dramatic, but it worked, right? So for me, I went back and learned how to cannulate probably almost 8 months after I was home.
So you did go home with
Yeah,
the
yeah,
catheter.
I
You
went
kept
home with
it
my
for a
catheter.
while.
I did. I went home with my catheter. I didn't have an access, so I had to get that. So over time, I went and got the access and it healed and all of those
Sure,
things.
that took a
Yeah,
little
and
time.
then I went back and learned how to cannulate. And I will tell you that I sat in the office in fear for the first week.
Of course.
Like literally just sat there, was like, I can't do it. It's not happening. And they were so good. They were so kind and patient and showing me all of the techniques and all of the things, the hand over hand, the poking the fake arm. I mean, I was floating needles and tubes. I was doing everything that you could possibly imagine to make me comfortable. And what worked for me was one needle, one time, like the concept of just doing it once. And even if you can never do it again, let's just get it done one time and see what happens. And for whatever reason, that just worked for me. Like it made it smaller. It didn't feel so big. And it didn't feel so forever. Because I think that's the other part of this, right? Is like you start thinking that you got to do this forever. And
Mhm.
so when it came to one needle, one time, it gave me a place to start. And once I did it, kind of like Keith, I was just like, okay, this really isn't that bad. Like, okay, I can do this. And then the next time it was easier, and the next time, and like, I mean, I've been doing this so long now that I'm like, needle what? Who cares? Like it's not, it's a non-issue now. So
Right,
yeah.
right.
But it took some time.
Yeah, I just think it's important for folks to hear that something that is so big and so scary that it might even make you go in center
Mhm.
and give up a lot of control over your
Right,
life and not maybe get as long of a treatment as you could get at home, and
yeah,
more is better.
right.
More dialysis is more like having healthy kidneys. I know that Jen has a ton of wisdom to share, and I want to give her a nice big chance to share it. And just maybe start with, how do you have that first conversation with someone when you pick up the signals that PD is starting to not work as well as it did?
So I'm a big fan of full disclosure. I have always liked prefacing all PD with the hemo conversation. Um, Not as a means of knocking PD. I really love PD when it's working great. It's so awesome when PD works great. But I don't like patients feeling neglected or like they were like something was big was hidden from them and crash. It makes me so sad when people crash into PD or HD after having been on PD. To me, that just makes so little sense. So I always tried to drop the little seeds of this is how PD works over in hemo. This is how it works. And it's I'm not saying your PD will fail. I'm just randomly dropping little nuggets of information. But when it comes to a point where a change or transition has to be made, having those little nuggets, those little sound bites that have gone on in all the clinic visits and all the PD training, it kind of comes rushing back in little ways, and it's less, I think, less overwhelming if you have heard some of the stuff before. Um, that's always kind of been my go-to for setting the stage. When I start seeing PD kind of trailing down, I really like talking about planning a shift.
What tells you that it's trailing down? What are you looking at versus what Rashonda or Keith might have seen?
Patients usually notice a return or a gradual return of uremic symptoms.
Mm.
And I think a lot of times I'm not sure people remember because you get so used to feeling a certain way all the time. I'm not sure patients necessarily are reminded frequently of what the symptoms of kidney failure are and uremia. And I think that sometimes this stuff just kind of flies under the radar. So it's a good thing. Does food taste okay? How's your sense of smell? Those
Hmm.
kinds of questions. Because patients will stop for a moment and consider it, and they'll be like, "Oh, that's what I'm experiencing. That's about a good time in subjective way to figure out when you need to start having that conversation. And the time burden. I mean, 14, 16 hours a day spent on dialysis, and then wondering the rest of the time when and where you're going to drain, when and where you're going to fill next. That is exhausting.
Yeah.
So at that point, it's almost humane. It is humane, I think, to make the transition sooner rather than later.
And Jen, I was just going to mention when you was talking about, the uremic things that happen, I think that's a big deal, right? That we don't talk about, especially with the transition from going on dialysis, picking a modality, and then often you're told you need to get used to your new normal. I was told that a lot. Like, I didn't even understand what that meant. And so what happened for me was when I did start to experience things that were actually uremia setting in, I thought it was my new normal. So I just slid them under the new normal and never said anything about them, right? Like, I didn't tell anybody because they kept telling me, oh, you have to get used to your new normal. And I didn't know what that meant. So for me, it was very upsetting, right? To learn that that was not my new normal. I was actually like building up with toxins and fluids and all the things, and like
those were the symptoms you were doing all this dialysis to stop having.
And I had no idea, but because there was this new normal in my vocabulary, I put everything under that until someone actually said to me, I think the question that I was asked was, can I sleep laying flat? Like, I feel like that was a question that one of the nurses asked me, and I was like, no. Like, I started putting pillows behind my head, right? I just started doing it because I couldn't lay flat. And she was like, why are you doing that? I was like, well, when I lay flat, I can't breathe. Like, I don't feel. And so that started a conversation, but I would have never said anything because I thought it was my new normal.
That's a really good point, and I've heard that new normal phrase a lot of times. We also did some research. This was a while ago now, but I don't actually think anything has necessarily changed. We did some research where we asked folks who had late stage chronic kidney disease, they weren't on dialysis yet, do you have any symptoms? And they generally would say, not really. I feel fine. I think the doctors are wrong about this. There's nothing wrong with me. Or, occasionally some of them be like, well, I'm a little fatigued. Or depending on the cause of the kidney disease, well, I can't fit my feet into my shoes anymore. But, other than that, I'm fine. And it turned out that while those of us who work in patient education or providing healthcare know what the symptoms of uremia are, a metallic taste in the mouth, feeling cold all the time, that's actually anemia, swelling in the hands, the feet, the face, the abdomen, itching, yes. Thank you, Jen. That's a good one. Feel free to pop up with any of the others that I am missing, but we knew them. And so when we would say, well, what symptoms do you have? We would just assume that you also knew them. That you would say, well, I'm itching and my feet are swelling and, I'm getting up 5 times at night to pee and, things like that. And what we learned in that study is that y'all don't know what the symptoms are and that people who assume may be making a very big mistake. And so we actually are big believers in a symptom list and then that you can just check off, yeah, I have that, or yes, I have this and it's getting worse, so that you don't have to know what the symptoms are. You can just look at them and say, yes, I have this, or no, I don't.
Right. Yeah. That makes a big difference.
Yeah.
It really does. I feel like half of the things that I felt was wrong with me was also wrong with someone who didn't have kidney disease, right? Like, I was exhausted, but I just thought I was working. I had kids.
You had a baby.
Right. So so this is like, there was like all the things.
Everybody and it was who has a baby is exhausted.
The chicken or the egg.
Right. It just didn't make any sense. So those things never popped into my mind, but yeah, it just took the right person asking the right question that made me go, oh, so this isn't normal or my new normal, right? This isn't my new normal. So yeah.
Right. So it's good that you had somebody who was able to ask the question that led to that. And you still crashed.
I still
So,
crashed. Yeah.
right. So, maybe being able to ask that a little sooner in the
Yeah.
process, or
Yeah.
maybe doing webinars like this where we tell
Right.
people what to expect and what the
Yeah.
symptoms are, and that they have lots of options.
Mhm.
There are a number of choices, and that flipping, it's actually a pretty typical thing over a long lifespan with kidneys that don't work anymore to switch from one treatment to another. That's normal. It's
Right.
unusual, really, for most people to start on one treatment and then stay on it for the next 15, 25, 35 years, depending on, how you're doing on the treatment.
Mhm.
So switching it's a normal thing. It's just part of life with, you know, and I should finish my sentence, just part of life with kidney disease, but it's also important to know that you don't have to wait until you crash to switch.
Right.
If whatever treatment you're doing is not letting you live life the way you want to,
Yep.
you
Mhm.
don't have the energy, you don't have the time because you are now connected to a machine for 15 hours a day. And this doesn't let you keep your job. And if you can't keep your job, you're going to have to give up your apartment, and where are you going to live? And, you know, living your life on your terms is the key. And the way to do that is to pick a treatment option that fits you where you are right now, and that can change over time, and you can switch over time.
Right.
And you may switch more than once. I mean, I know people who've switched a number of times. I also know somebody who did PD for 25 years.
Mhm.
That's unusual, but it does happen. And she was a
Mhm.
tiny little woman, which helps. Little bitty people tend to be able to do PD longer, but
Mhm.
honestly, it just depends on your membrane, and everybody's membrane is different, and nobody gets to see it or count the pores in it. And
I know. I'm surprised there's
Yeah.
not a test for that yet.
yeah, there kind of isn't though, and
Yeah, I
they're
know.
really different. So
Yeah.
Jen, what would you add in here?
I wanted to know what the difference was in how you both were actually transitioned. So like Rashonda, I know you crashed in, so you had to go to hemo.
Mhm.
Keith, did you get to do step-based training? Like, did you get to do some days of PD and then some days of hemo to get over, or did you make a full switch right away?
I made a full switch. Uh, well, yeah, I did. I had talked to my doctor, and just like I said before, the time frame, 14 hours a day, I just couldn't do it anymore. And so I went and got the fistula placed, and I can't remember the healing time. I want to say it was like 2 months to heal that, but I can't remember for sure. And I did PD during that time, but the day I went for training was the night before. That was the last time I did PD, and I did 2 weeks of in-center training or at our clinic, and then the nurses came home to my house for it was about a week and a half, and did in-home training with me.
Awesome.
And from that point on, I was HHD. So
It took you 2, 3 weeks.
yeah,
How about you?
Wow.
And looking back on all that, and kind of getting back to what we had talked about before and how we felt and stuff before PD, I thought, I'm just like Rashonda said, just kind of drug out, busy, tired, and all that. And when I started PD, I did not really know how sick I was when I wasn't doing anything. And then, it's just like a car, you turn the headlights on, and oh, that's how much better you can see or feel. And then when I went from PD into HHD, it's like somebody turned the bright lights on.
Mhm.
It was
Right.
like, after a day or two, I was like, holy cow, I feel awesome. I was ready to go out and run races and stuff. But yeah, I just jumped right into it.
What a lot of people don't realize, and I think it's because we don't really do a great job of explaining this, is that hemodialysis is much, much more efficient.
Much
Mhm.
more
Mhm.
efficient.
And that's why
Yep.
you do cycler PD for 8 or 10 or 12 or up to 14 hours, and then hopefully you stop doing PD. That's pretty much equivalent to going to a clinic 3 times a week and getting about 4 hours of treatment. So you would think it would be more because it's so many hours, but it isn't because it's very gentle, but it isn't very efficient. And that's why when you switch, you can feel that much better because you're getting that much better of a blood cleaning.
Yep.
How long did it take you, Rashonda, to learn home hemo?
So when I trained for home hemo, it was a traditional 5 weeks. Like that was like the step, that was the training was 5 weeks. If it took you longer, fine. If it was quicker, great. But it was about 5 weeks of training. And at the time I was at a next stage center. So I was in a next stage that was home for home. Like that is what they did. That is all they did. And so I tell people I received such amazing training, right? Because the goal wasn't just to get you home, it was to keep you home. And
Right.
so it was a very thorough training. And it was very empowering. Like they really just helped me to take control and to feel like I knew everything. Like I knew what I was doing. I understood, so many things that went along with going home. And so like Keith, I experienced the bright lights, after a few days of getting cleaned with the next stage machine. And I was skipping into training, like literally, like almost into a dance because I was just so thrilled with how I felt. And I was okay with that being my new normal. Like if that's what someone wanted to call my new normal, then I was okay with that because it was the closest I felt to my regular self
How
in forever.
how old was your daughter? You have a daughter, right?
Yeah, I
How
have a
old was she at
daughter.
that point?
So let me think a few minutes. So she was born in 2013. So when I started, she was going on 3. So
Okay.
she was about 2.5 when I started PD. So when I switched over to hemo, she was about 4.5, 5.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I was nervous about her being
Right.
around hemo. And at the center, they was like, bring her in here. And I was like, what? They said, bring her in here, let her walk through
Yep.
and kind of see everything and see in a controlled environment. Like let her see how
Right.
she reacts. And I remember the day her and my oldest daughter came in, because I have an older daughter too. And so when they came in together, my youngest walked in, she walked straight over to me. She just was like made a beeline for me. I was
Oh,
hooked up. There's blood in the machine, everything. She said, "Are you almost done? Can we go?" And I was just like, that's it. Like there was no response to the blood. There was no response to the machine. Like there was just no response to it at all. But again, she had been around PD. So she did have
mhm.
experience with mommy being on treatment. She's my dialysis baby, so that's how I, talk about her
Right.
because
Right.
she's been around since I've started dialysis, so that's kind of all she knows. But the biggest thing for me was, a lot of people don't want to bring this home with their kids, right? A lot of
Yes.
people I know say, I
Yes.
don't want to burden my children. I don't want to have this around my kids. But I tell people like this is the best decision I ever made to bring this into my house
Yeah.
because my kids don't see me as sick,
Yep.
right? Like they don't describe me as a sick mom who can't. Like I have never had my children say I can't because my mom is sick. And that has been the biggest blessing for me to be able to do this at home and to have a modality that works so well that keeps me
Hmm.
from presenting as sick, right?
Right.
And
You're
so
just
that
mommy.
has
Yep.
yeah, I'm just mom. And I'm not just
Yes.
mom. I'm mom who can do, and I'm mom who can be there, right? I'm chair mom. I'm PTA mom. I'm book sale mom. I'm kind of too much of
Oh,
that. So, yeah, so I'm able to do all of those things though because of this modality and how good I feel doing it. So the transition has been great for my kids. Sometimes I wonder if they're a little jaded because I know there is another side of dialysis and there aren't people who experience the same thing that I do. So they don't really think much about dialysis and they don't think much about kidney disease because
It's
I'm
just what,
living.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
just what
right.
they
I'm living
know.
so well. And so for
Yeah.
them, they're just like, oh, my mom is on dialysis and they just keep moving. So, but yeah, but it's been a really good experience for everyone. My youngest child doesn't have any fear of this. Like she will come down and she'll pull needles. She's
Mhm.
12 now. She'll pull
Yeah.
my needle. She'll hold my site if I ask her to.
Yeah.
So there, yeah, there's no issues
Or
with
she
that at
may have
all.
a career in medicine.
She might. She very well might. I don't know. She don't like school that much, so we'll see. But yeah, but I tell people don't let that hold you up. Like, don't let that keep you from bringing this home. It really is not a burden because you're able to do life on your terms. And it really opens up so much for you. It really has. It's opened up so much for me to be able to move this treatment around and fit it in
Mm-hmm.
wherever I need to.
Mm-hmm.
Makes it so much better when you have a family, right? And when you have other things you want to do, I can move it. Okay, I can't do it at 7. All right, I'll do it in the morning at 3:30 if I want to, right? Like I can put it wherever I need it to go and still do a good treatment and still feel good. And that is just amazing.
Keith, you had mentioned that you would disconnect from your PD and if you had a call where you had to go in. And
Mhm.
how does home hemo work for you when you get a call and you need to go in? What do you do then?
Home hemo in that respect was really fabulous because going from 14 hours a day down to 2.5
Oh yeah,
was
yeah.
a total night and day.
Yeah.
And then, where I work in a small town, I was really blessed. If I would need, get called out during that treatment, a couple times I would visit with the families and say, I've got about 45 minutes left on my treatment. And
Mhm.
they would say, oh, that's fine. We figured you were doing that. Just take your time and finish that. And then we'll get together, come over then.
Yeah.
And so I was really blessed.
That's
But
awesome.
just the time frame cut down from the 14 to the 2.5 hours. It was just amazing.
Feels like a gift, doesn't it, Keith?
It does. A total gift.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
that's I think yeah, I think that the time regained to live your
Mhm.
life
Oh yeah.
is
Yeah.
such a huge piece
That
of
is the
that
easiest
flip,
point to sell as a nurse in case anyone ever wondered.
Yeah.
right?
That's the best one to sell as a nurse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like Rashonda said, the freedom that you have with the HHD,
Mm-hmm.
with the PD, we are stuck within a 20-foot circle of that cycler because of the drain line. And, this is when you have to do it, and that's it. But with the HHD, like she said, you can schedule your treatments whenever, as long as it's done during that day at
Mhm.
some point. It was just, if I had to go back to it again, I would go directly to HHD. I wouldn't even think twice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just the flexibility in it is amazing.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is the flexibility and the reduction in supplies. I don't know if
Yep.
anyone understands. When I started PD, they told me there was going to be a lot of supplies, but I don't think anyone prepares you for the pallet that pulls up to your house
Oh no,
to
no,
make
they
the
don't.
first delivery. And you're looking like, where is this going to go and who's putting it there? And
It
so
is an actual palette.
it is an
Yes, a
actual pallet.
full palette,
Yes, a full
like
pallet.
Amazon.
Yes, and it's not as fun as Amazon, okay? So
No.
yeah, so it's like, what are you supposed to do with this? So I mean, when you switch from PD to HHD, I think that's one of the biggest things is you get space back, right? Like your
Yeah.
supplies reduction is amazing. I think it's about a third like of the supplies that you would get with PD. And I tell people like when you're switching from PD to HHD, no, don't assume automatically you're just gonna get it. Like it's just like You know, you still have to learn the machine, you still have to learn the routine and give yourself time. I tell everyone who's going to learn or start this modality to give themselves 6 months. It sounds long, but it's not. Like if
Yeah.
you think of when you started a new job, like
Right.
how long it took you to kind of get the groove of that new job, right? And feel like it was yours and make it your own. That's the same thing when you switch a modality and you switch over to home hemo. You have to make it your own. You have to fit it into your routine. You know, you have to kind of tweak it and kind of learn what works for you and what doesn't. But then once you do, there's a sweet spot that you hit, right?
Yep.
Where this just fits in and now you're just riding it out and it's a really nice
I
place.
think that sweet
Yeah.
spot comes after usually the first 3 or 4 months.
Right.
And I think that there are too many people who give up before.
Before, yes.
What we talk about that as in the Facebook group is getting into a routine.
Yeah.
That sweet spot means you get it, it
Mhm.
works, you remember the
Mhm.
steps, you figured out how to get your supplies together so that they are where you need them, when you need them, and you have all the ones you need, and your snack, and your TV remote, and
Yep.
your phone, and a flashlight, and
Yeah.
just the stuff that you need to have within your arm reach.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it takes some time
It
to
does.
get to where that is easy. It's like, this
I
is easy. Why
Yeah.
did it feel so hard at first? But
it
it
does.
does
Your
take time to
routine.
get there. And if you are willing to invest the time
Mhm.
to do it, it pays off, and it can pay
It's
off
worth it.
years.
So I told you guys I've transitioned into nocturnal.
Mhm.
So when you said that, I have to remind myself of that. Even in my transition to nocturnal is different than
Right?
how I was doing my treatments during the
Yep.
day. Right. So even like I was like, oh, what do I need? Right. Because everything was right beside me. But now if you're gonna go and lay down or you're gonna go and
Right.
get in your
You are
like
in a
it's a
different
different space.
position,
So
and
yeah.
things are
So I
different.
have to remind myself that I
Yep.
need to get into a routine again, that I'm not
Yep.
quite there yet. So I feel a little discombobulated and kind of
Yeah.
all over the place. So
Yeah,
I'm like, it feels like I'm starting all over again, to be honest.
a little bit.
So
Yeah,
yeah, it takes a little bit of planning to get that routine down. So I
it
just tell
does.
people, give yourself time. Don't give up. Like you said,
Well,
don't throw in the
time and
towel.
grace.
Yes.
Yes.
When you first go home
Mhm.
with PD or with home hemo, you may want to clear the decks, have people bring you meals or prep meals on the weekends. A
Mhm.
crock pot can be your friend,
Yeah.
and just clear the decks of anything that you don't have to do,
Mhm.
so that you can just focus and give yourself some
Yeah.
time, get into that routine, and then you can, pick back up some of the things that you had to put down.
It's very similar to what we say to people when they're having a baby and they're about to have that life
Exactly.
change.
Yes.
And it's so funny that like, the same advice applies. Like,
Yes.
bring you a meal. Take
Yes.
Yeah.
things off of your plate that you don't need to have on there.
Mhm. Yeah.
And whether you call it a casserole or a hot dish, I guess depends on where you live.
Right. Right.
They both work. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who doesn't love a good casserole?
Mhm.
So I was going to ask you if there was anything when you were making the flip that went more easily than you expected, because you had already done PD and kind of had a concept of, say, effluent or flow or whatever, and anything that was
Hmm.
harder than you thought it would be.
I think for me, like just learning the machine wasn't as difficult as I thought it was going to be,
Hmm.
right? Like switching over from my PD machine, they're different devices, but once you can read one, I feel like you can read the other, right?
Right.
Like it really wasn't as challenging as you may think it's going to be. They're different, but they're the same, if that makes sense, right? Like you're still just hitting a couple of buttons to get your programming going. So I found that to be a relief. As far as anything that was difficult, other than cannulation, right? Like I feel like that's the only like monkey wrench that's kind of thrown into
So the
home
rest of
hemo.
it was pretty easy, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of the rest of it. I mean,
Yeah, there really is,
there
but
are many steps to use that machine, and
there
people
are,
just,
but they're so repetitive. It's the
yes,
Yes.
same thing all the time, right? You're talking
absolutely.
about mundane. It's the same thing every single time. It doesn't change. And so it becomes very routine. And if you just stick with it, it just becomes, it's regular. Like it's just what I do. Like I can literally do this with my eyes closed. Like I can
Right.
set my machine up with my eyes closed. So
Well, Keithy, I wanted to give you a chance to answer that. What went more easily and what was harder than you thought? English, no longer my language.
Kind of, I would just mimic what Roshonda said. I didn't really have a problem. The cannulation was my biggest hurdle. And, I always looked at this whole thing, whether it was PD or HHD, as these are the cards I'm dealt. I'm going to have to play the best hand I can and do what I need to do to make it work. And yeah, I really didn't experience any major problems or anything like that through the change. Yeah, it
Okay.
was.
Looking back now that you are where you are, and this is a question for both of you too, how would you tell someone when it's time to think about switching from PD to home hemo? Like, how do you avoid the crash? How do you know what sort of symptoms do you have when things are going south?
For me, it was just the time factor.
Mm-hmm. So the
Like
getting to 14 hours on the cycler, yeah, that's a
yeah, yeah. And yeah, I would say that
I would say
well,
anything over 10 personally, but that's just me.
maybe didn't feel as well as I did when I first started PD.
Okay, so
I was just getting back and I can't really put a name to it or how I felt, but I just knew things weren't as good as they used to be.
mhm.
And that's what pushed me to have
So
the
is that
conversation
in
with my
terms
doctor.
of was that in terms of like your energy level or just like thinking more slowly or
Yeah, more
specific things?
just a foggy brain type
I figured
feeling. And
that was part of it.
I didn't have the energy and
Mm.
stuff that I used to, as compared to when I first started PD. So,
Yeah, but
yeah,
it's that's still tricky because in the midst of, dealing with kidney disease or whatever, we are all getting older too. So then
yeah,
it's hard to say, well,
we
they talk
are.
about seniors having brain fog. Maybe I'm just getting older and it's, teasing
Yeah,
out, wait a minute, my blood isn't clean enough. It needs
yeah.
to be cleaner. That can be tricky. It can especially be tricky when you're brain foggy because it's hard to, really puzzle anything out when that's happening.
Two, another thing for me was I was forgetful.
Hmm.
Stuff that I would remember, a year or two before, and just I knew it. And with my job and stuff, I was starting to let some of that stuff slip and,
Yeah, it's a little
not being
scary.
able to remember everything, details and things like that.
Right. Then
Yeah.
you start to think,
Huh.
is this it for me and my job? And you don't really
Yeah.
want to go there. So yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
And
Rashonda, you had symptoms of, not being able to sleep laying down, but I'm
Mhm.
guessing that there were some others too.
Yeah, so I love when you said, instead of asking people what their symptoms are, you give them a list. Like,
Yeah.
I think that that's probably something that should just be done like
Yep.
regularly at appointments is like, give a person a list of things to see where they are, even from the month before,
Right.
right? So that you can just have a kind of comparison. And
Mm-hmm.
then instead of your new normal, I think the better thing would be to get as close to what normal was for you, right?
Yes.
Because then you actually have a real place to gauge for yourself. Like if someone would have said to me, we're going to try to get you as close to your normal,
Mm-hmm.
then I would have been like, oh, well, I'm not even close. Like, this isn't even, like, we're not
Yeah,
even at 50%. You know what I mean? Like, I would have had
right.
something to go off of. But I feel like to start talking to patients about this should happen at the beginning. Like, I think that that full education is important. You know, transparency, letting a patient know that PD is probably not going to be a forever modality, but that's
Right,
okay, right?
right,
These are the other options, and this is what it might look like for you. Preparation, I wish I had an access. I wish
right.
that my doctor would have said to me, even if you don't want to do home hemo, you're going to end up in center or something, you need to get an
Gonna end up
access.
doing some kind of
Right, let's
hemo.
go get that
When
access
you're
place.
when you're going from 10 hours on the cycler to
Right.
12,
Yeah,
or
exactly. So I
yeah.
think that would have been one of the biggest things for me is to prevent that catheter being put in,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't need to have it. You don't need to have a catheter thrown in, as the doctors like to say, well, throw a catheter in. And I'm like,
Right.
that does not feel good when you say it like that. But so yeah, so I would have loved to have preparation, to have an access place. But again, I feel like dropping gems all along the way, and just in preparation for is probably the best way to deal with the transition from PD to HHD. And I don't like patients to think of it as a failure. This is a journey. Things
Yes.
change,
Yes.
right? Your body changes, your life changes, and so your modality may need to change as well, and that's okay.
Now, what I didn't hear either one of you saying is my partner who helps me with home hemo. Do you both dialyze solo?
Yeah.
Excellent. That's something I think that would be great to mention because
Mhm.
besides people not knowing that home hemo even exists, there's still a myth out there that you have
Mhm.
to have a partner to do home hemo.
Right.
If you
Yeah.
are able, and you two are clearly able, you don't need a partner. You can dialyze solo. So what's that been like for each of you?
For me, it was great. I mean, we had that planned really from the beginning, and my doctor, told me, he said, I don't think you'll have any problems doing solo. And when I left training, he had already approved me for solo. Uh, I did. My wife was there, and I think once or twice I needed help when I pulled the needles.
Pulled a needle. I knew
Yeah,
it.
I had just had a little, I don't know, things didn't work out quite like I had planned, and she had gotten me a couple extra cotton swabs and helped hold those, and that was really the only time that I ever needed a partner there to help.
hmm
I have a
Yep.
term for that. I call it the hey honey assist.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I was trained solo too. I'm in Massachusetts, so I had kind of a interesting journey with that. I was trained solo. It was pulled away because Massachusetts was one of the only states that took away solo for a short period of time.
Oh
So I
goodness.
had to get a care partner after I was trained solo.
Uh,
And so I did end up having a
Wait,
care. I know,
Ernie.
I know. I did end up having a care partner for a short period of time, but initially was trained solo. My fiance became my care partner. But again, he was literally just like emergency disconnect. Like he wasn't doing anything else.
Hey, honey.
Um, yeah, so he was Hey Honey. So yeah, so that was it. I will tell you that as a solo patient, there are a lot of things that I have learned to do. So like I don't have to do the Hey Honey. So I have a lot of the extra emergency stuff kind of stashed beside me.
Box.
Yeah, I have a little container that I can like reach into one hand, like there's certain things that I have set up so that if I do run into an instance where I'm like, oh, that's a little bit more blood than I thought, then I have all of those things. But that comes with time and experience, right? But yeah, I've been solo. I tell people sometimes I call it independent because there's usually someone floating around my house, so maybe not
Yeah.
alone.
Yeah.
But I do all of my
I think it's
dialysis
great to
myself.
have somebody floating around the house if you
Yeah,
have somebody to float
right,
around your house.
right.
We have a question from Facebook, which is
Yay.
if there is one thing that could be created that technology-wise that could enhance your treatment experience, what might that be? I will give
So
a
there's probably
suggestion.
two
Y'all
for
don't have
me. I probably have
Yep.
two. One that I really am hoping it's the biggest wish and prayer is for my machine to become light as a feather so that I can
Yes.
travel with it and take it with me a lot easier than what it is because it's
Yeah.
very heavy. I would love to be able to move it around by myself independently, right?
Yep.
And then the
Yep.
other thing I would really like is another way to cannulate. Like, I don't want to have to stick myself twice. I want a more efficient way of doing
Hmm.
needling. And I know there was a one needle
There was a
stick.
single
There
needle
was a single
at
needle. And so I'm
various
hoping they
points.
improve it somehow so that
Yeah.
I can use one needle and get away with a one needle technique. And that would make me feel a lot better about things. But other than
Well,
that, I'm
single
okay.
needle would seem like a pretty good fit for nocturnal
I
because the blood
know.
flow rates are so much
So
slower.
slow. I'm
Interesting
telling you.
thought.
Yeah.
Heath, how about you?
I suppose, I mean, if the sky's the limit, I would like to see them develop something that is wearable.
Hmm.
And
That would have been my default
Somebody's
answer
been
too. Bionic
trying for a
kidneys.
very long time,
I
yeah,
and
know.
they are still trying. So,
Yeah.
you
you
know,
know, they make heart pumps
Yep.
that
mhm.
are wearable. You put a
Yeah, and
couple
they did
batteries in a
not
vest.
start out wearable.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm sure they didn't, but
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah.
that would be my
Yeah.
deal is
yeah.
wearable, and you just dialyze just like
Yep.
somebody with normal kidneys.
That's right. I
Well,
love that.
and I just have a few little challenges to solve, like where does the effluent go?
It should go to the
Can
regular.
ya hook that into your bladder so you can just get rid of
Go
it
to the
right
bathroom.
away?
Ooh.
That would be
Ooh.
pretty great. How does that
Ooh.
work? Still some questions.
Mhm.
And there are folks working on an implantable kidney as well. They've been
Yeah.
working on it for a while, and they're
Yeah.
still working on it, and who knows what will come.
Mhm.
My wish for you all actually is that one of the companies that is working on getting plastic dialysis needles through
Yes.
the FDA will actually do that so that at least for nocturnal, you have an option where the needle that stays in your arm isn't steel.
Especially
It is
Mm.
nocturnal.
bendable.
Wow.
I mean, they make them.
Hmm.
They exist. They're
Right.
used.
That's amazing. I
They're
didn't even know
regular
that was a
plastic
thing.
cannulas that run.
Well, it's a thing. It's been a thing in Japan for
Mm.
something like 30 years.
Yeah,
And
they
that
say Japan's
spread.
living in 2055, so we get
They
it.
are. And the thing that kills me is they never published a single journal article on it. Not one that I could
Wow.
find, and I looked. And
Really?
the titles and the abstracts are usually in English, even if the article is in Japanese.
Wow.
Nothing, not a single article. But in Asia, they've all had it for about 20 years once they figured out that the Japanese were using it. And then it spread to Canada and most of Europe, and the US is the only major player that doesn't yet have a plastic cannula, but we are presumably quite close, and there are a couple of companies that claim that they are going
Okay,
to do
I'll
that
have to
shortly.
keep my eye
Hmm.
out for that
And I
one.
hope they do, and I hope that telling the world in webinars like this will help it be sooner.
Yes.
Don't know, but yeah, there are any number of things that could make life. I love the idea of making that next stage cycler weigh half of what it does. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's a
Yes.
lot of very cool, complex engineering inside of there
Right, I know.
that is very challenging to make any
The
lighter.
pumps I hear are heavy.
The
It's the
pumps
pumps
are
are heavy.
solid metal and they're super cool. And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
But boy, what I would do for them to be light.
I know. I know. Well, maybe titanium. I don't
I
know.
know. Huh?
Maybe they can 3D print something.
Something.
I don't know
Something.
what. And then there
Something.
is xenotransplantation seems like it's kind of taken the
Yeah, I
lead
know. It
as
is.
far as
Yeah,
non-dialysis kidney replacement options that
yeah,
are starting to look a little more promising.
they
So
are.
exciting. So I want to let Jen say if there is anything that we didn't cover that we should have covered.
Oh, I wrote this down because it was
Good.
such an interesting thing, and I thought that I would bring it up at the end. And that was
Perfect.
both Keith and Rashonda basically mentioned that Technicolor moment when they finally got good treatment, efficient treatment. And I've had patients describe this to me as getting to taste the rainbow, or it's sort of like one of those like mind altering moments. And I just wanted to point that out, that like, you know, when you have a low, you know, there's usually a good high that follows, and you're more appreciative of it when that happens. And that kind of helps spin having to make a transition like that, just to hear that people got to see the world a little bit brighter after having made the change.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. All right, well, we are right at the top of our hour, so I would like to thank Fresenius Medical Care for sponsoring this webinar. I would like to thank Jen and Keith and Rashonda for sharing their experiences with all of you. And I just want to note that the takeaways that we would like you all to have is that it's important to be aware of your options. PD is not a forever therapy, but there are many options for you that you can pick one that will fit your life. How you know it's time to make a switch can be a combination of things like your lab test values that your nurse tells you, and the extension of time on your cycler if you use a cycler, or having symptoms like not being able to breathe or being bloated. You know, paying attention to all of those things is important. You should feel well on dialysis. So if you feel yourself sort of starting to slip and feel less well, bring that up with your care team. That's a thing that you need to talk about. If your clinic doesn't, oops, sorry, let me back up one step. That was one thing, awareness of the options. How you know when it's time. Okay, I just said that. And then the next steps to training, really, those kind of depend on your clinic and which options your clinic has. So you may be able to go right from PD into home HD at the clinic you are in if they have both. If they don't have both, then you may have to find a different clinic, and it's going to have to be a different clinic that your insurance pays for. And if your center doesn't have a home hemo program, one thing you can do is call Fresenius patient consultants. So I hope you have a pencil or something to write with, or an iPad or a phone, so you can write down this number. But actual patients answer this phone number, and even some of them in Spanish. It is 1-888-200-6456, and that's to reach the Fresenius patient consultants. So thank you again for joining us today, and have a wonderful rest of your day.